Welcome to Expedition Frozen Seal. My buddy Rick and I have planned a winter motorcycle expedition beginning in Tok, Alaska, going through Fairbanks, through Coldfoot, and up to Prudhoe Bay. We then intend to turn around and ride back to Tok. Total mileage for this trip is planned to be 1,400 miles, and we are embarking on a journey that many would consider completely insane. We will face extreme cold temperatures, wind chills down to negative 85 degrees, ice-covered roads, large 18-wheeler traffic, and other hazards. This trip takes place in early March 2024. The idea that this was even a possibility hatched out in November of 2023 while I was working on Operation Iced Over. My buddy Rick from Florida had commented on a video that I had made announcing my 180-mile road trip to the Alaska border in December. He said something like, "How about we go to Prudhoe Bay?" I initially took this as a bit of a joke, but then got to thinking about it. I messaged him, "You actually interested in a Prudhoe Bay run? Logistics and prep would be a chore. We would need tire studs for your bike. You'd need a set of tires to stud, and we're talking very cold. Pretty high risk of dumping bikes in the road, possible injuries, limited medical available. Winter riding gear to be safe on a run that far out would be extremely important. Bikes will need winterization, and I honestly don't know yet how challenging that will be to accomplish." We started planning for this trip specifically in December of 2023. We determined we would need a support car with a trailer just in case we had a severe injury or bike crash for self-extraction, and we would need a good comm system that would be able to link both us and the support car together. I reached out to Prudhoe Systems, who had just come out with their Edge phones, and they sponsored me a set of Prudhoe PackTalk Edge phones and an Edge Duo set for connecting all of us together with comms for this trip. Hippo Hands sponsored Rick a set of their Alcan hand covers, which I knew would be very important on this ride since I have already been using them for quite some time. Grip Studs Traction sponsored us tire studs for both bikes, and we settled on their GST-1300 studs for both front and back of both bikes. These are tungsten carbide tipped studs with a wide helical base that bite into the tire and look like they will hold very well. Check out gripstuds.com for more details on their tire studs. Rick arrived on March 5, and we scrambled to get ready for the trip. He pulled his bike out of storage in Fairbanks, got some maintenance done on it, and brought it to my place where we studded the tires, set up the Hippo Hands, and prepared everything to go. We did a test run on an unplowed, only hard-packed road that had loose snow that was very rough, and discovered that Rick's bike sinks into that a little bit heavy. We knew that road surface conditions could not get worse than what we had already test rode on. And on day one, we set out from Tok, Alaska to Fairbanks, Alaska. The temperatures on day one were around -4 up to +3 degrees Fahrenheit. And we stopped a few times, adjusted layers, and edited the way we were wearing our layers for optimal warmth. It was a bit of a learning process as we went. Now, if you're wondering why we decided to do this trip, it's very simple, just because it's difficult. We believe that life was meant to be lived. We believe that humans were designed to face challenges and to overcome those challenges. Can you think of a better way to go live than to take on a challenge that most would say is impossible and then accomplish that challenge? Now, we understand the risks that we took on this trip. We mitigated them where possible, had a good med plan, a good med kit, the ability to self-extract, and to hunt down help if needed. We prepared the best we could, but even so, after day one ended in Fairbanks 210 miles later, we recognized that we were going to have to take this trip just a few miles at a time. We don't know exactly how it will go from here forward. We will face temperatures, according to the forecast, down to negative 40 degrees.
Having to do videos for both YouTube and Instagram. A bit more of a thing.
That forecasted temperature does not include the howling crosswinds or the winds of riding the motorcycle that we will face. We left Fairbanks and headed up the highway towards the Dalton Highway. Our speeds varied between 20 and about 50 miles per hour, and road conditions were pretty good in the beginning. We made it to the Dalton Highway start sign, excited, quite nervous, and still recognizing we were going to have to take this ride just a mile at a time. The temperatures on day 2 ranged down to about negative 14 or negative 15 degrees at the coldest point. Road conditions were reasonable for the most part, with a mix of gravel on ice, patches of pavement, and hard-pack white snowy ice. My winter gear outfit consisted of a good base layer, a heated layer that included heated socks, heated pants, heated jacket, and heated gloves, a fleece outer layer, and a down snowsuit that I have had for the last 10 years. Rick and I are both also running helmets with heated visors to keep frost out of our lenses. I found that I have only needed to run my heated gear on the mid-setting at these temperatures today. We found that in spite of running over 200 miles on day 1 on pavement with our tire studs, that they held up well. They gripped the ice well, and we were slightly wobbling back and forth in the grooves that were cut into the ice, but maintained good traction and had no issues along the way. We enjoyed some stunning scenery, and when we crossed over the Yukon River, we stopped at Yukon Camp, got out of some of our winter gear, and enjoyed a snack and some coffee before we suited back up to continue on towards Coldfoot. We were absolutely tickled with our Cardo Systems comm set. The PackTalk Edge units and the Edge phones worked well to keep both of us on the motorcycles and Kayla driving our support car connected and able to communicate about road hazards and keep ourselves entertained along the ride. Here on day 2, in spite of the significant cold weather, the Cardo Systems units stayed working even in the cold for all but the last couple hours of our ride. Here on day 2, we went nearly 250 miles, began in Fairbanks, and ended in Coldfoot, Alaska, where we put the bikes in a warm garage and spent the night there. Our total ride time today was somewhere over 8 hours, maybe closer to 9, and we made it in safely. Still looking at the weather forecast for day 3 as being negative 40 degrees up near Prudhoe Bay. My gas gauge was showing I was a little low, a little bit short of Coldfoot, so I put some gas in. I didn't want to deal with running out of fuel. in the cold if that caused any fuel pump problems. The wind picked up a bit as the sun began to set and as we were cresting some of the taller hills coming into Coldfoot. The last bit of the evening, as the sun was setting, was spent riding the last few miles into town. We stopped at Coldfoot Camp, where the thermometer showed the temperature as -8 degrees, ate supper. I found my sticker that I'd left on the wall last August, and we put the bikes up, and we'll continue north to Prudhoe, 1 mile at a time, starting tomorrow morning. We started off the morning of day 3 repairing or temporarily repairing a break in Rick's windshield mount bracket, tied it into place with some paracord, and then wrapped some duct tape around it to tighten it up and hold it up to help shield the wind. We then hit the road with the sun shining and temperatures around -20 degrees Fahrenheit. We could not have asked for a more clear or amazing winter day, other than maybe slightly warmer temperatures. We were absolutely tickled with our hippo hands, and up to this point, we're only running light heated liner gloves inside of the hippo hands with our heated grips, and we're keeping warm hands throughout the ride. The glazed ice shown here on the road was slick. I was nearly positive for a time that one of us was going to wreck a bike. The tire studs kept us on track, but we were sliding back and forth within the grooves and ruts in the road. The wind was blowing sideways pretty significantly, and it felt unstable and a bit unnerving as we continued riding. We passed this group of bicyclists on the road just shy of Atigun Pass, and I was a bit interested in their winter expedition. We did not stop. We continued riding on. Here you can see us approaching the climb that goes up the mountains towards Atigun Pass. It was as we climbed Atigun Pass that the temperatures dropped to about 25 below 0 Fahrenheit. The wind stayed quite significant, and the scenery was absolutely stunning. It is literally breathtaking out here. While we were stopped for some photos, Rick tried making this guy honk, but apparently he didn't think we were that cool. We tried again with the next 18-wheeler that passed by and got a bit of a honk out of him. We were tickled. I guess you could say that sometimes we're pretty easy to entertain. Riding through the mountains here, and as we climbed up Atigun Pass to the top of the hills, we couldn't help but feel like we were riding on another planet. It was an amazing feeling, and it was a sense of doing something that very few would ever get to do. Rick and I have ridden through this area last fall in early September, and I had ridden out here in August as well last year. It was stunning then, but it was even more stunning now. As we continued north of the pass, I had to turn my heated gear up to the high setting to be completely comfortable. Temperatures were down to about -27 at this point, and it was still quite windy when we weren't protected by the close-by hills. We frequently pulled over and stopped on the shoulder as the big traffic approached from either direction. We were riding slower than the 18-wheelers traveling the same direction as us and did not want to risk wiping out in front of one that was coming the opposite direction and getting run over. The Dalton Highway was built for commercial motor vehicle traffic hauling supplies up to Dead Horse and the oil fields to support the oil wells there. And while it is open to the public, its purpose is still obvious that it is largely for supply delivery by the big trucks. We tried to stay out of their way and not cause a problem or not make them feel like we were in the way as much as we could. About 115 or so miles out of Prudhoe Bay, we found a muskox herd. That was pretty cool. And we continued north. By the time we were 100 miles out of Prudhoe Bay, the temperature was negative 37 degrees Fahrenheit. The digital display on Rick's BMW actually showed the temperature at this cold. I found that a little bit humorous and wondered who at BMW thought that someone would be out here riding their motorcycle at this temperature. At this temperature, while riding at 45 miles per hour, the wind chill was negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit. This was the point that the ride went from fun to not fun. I'll talk a little bit further about the cold here soon. We made it into Prudhoe Bay and stopped in the parking lot of the warehouse where we were going to put the bikes in for the night and discovered that Rick's bike had blown an oil seal and had oil all everywhere. We don't think that we will be able to continue riding the bikes. Mine was still running fine, but the BMW had had enough of the cold. This is oil all over Rick's pant leg and boot. It had obviously been leaking for a little while. We will reassess the bike in the morning when we return to the shop.
All right, we made it here to Dead Horse. We don't have the bikes because we had to put them in storage. To put them in the shop for the night. We just made it. Rick's bike blew a seal and was leaking oil, so we'll be trailering from here. But we made it to Prudhoe. Yay! Negative 36 or 7 for the last 2 hours of the ride.
The last 100 miles.
I think we've successfully pushed machines and us to the absolute limit.
Here we go.
Glad to be here.
Unless you've booked a hotel room ahead of time, they are fairly expensive and hard to get up here at this time of year. So Kayla and I camped out on the trailer in our sleeping bags at negative 37 degrees, and Rick slept in the car, and my kids who had tagged along also slept in the car for the ride. On the morning of day 4, we returned to the shop and checked out the bikes. Rick's bike had no oil, and we definitely were trailering home from here. We loaded the BMW up with a come-along. It was running when we stopped, and we were going to go to the BMW dealer in Fairbanks and let them assess it and determine if there was any damage. I loaded my bike, and then we drove to the Dead Horse sign where we got a couple of photos and a video shot with us parked in front of the sign, although unfortunately on the trailer. We were there. We were initially quite a bit bummed that we were not going to be able to ride the return trip, but we had pushed our machines to the absolute maximum, and the BMW had had enough. We didn't quit. We simply pushed everything to the very end. We made it to Prudhoe Bay, and we feel like we did complete the ride. Back on the subject of the cold temperatures on the last 2 hours into Prudhoe Bay, the speeds we were riding at were between 40 and 50 miles per hour. That made the wind chill at negative 37 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 75 to negative 85 degrees Fahrenheit. That was cold. With my heated gear on high, I still was extremely chilled. Our comm systems had died by then due to the extreme cold, and we were unable to verbally communicate. I knew, based on the way I was feeling, that I was flat out cold. Whenever I would flex my quads for about the last hour and then relax them, trying to keep blood flowing, I could feel the muscle release in 2 layers. I knew that I wasn't getting frostbite, but I was definitely getting chilled. Not being able to talk to Rick as we rode, I was worried, and about every 10 or so minutes would slow down. Rick would pull up beside me, look over, I'd point and hold a thumbs up, and he would shake his head and point that we should keep on riding. So we kept riding. I think we were both pretty miserable by the time we'd made it to Prudhoe Bay, but we were too close to quit, and we did not get any cold injuries. We carefully assessed whether or not we could continue and made good choices, and we did make it. Funny enough, it was slower driving, towing the bikes, than it had been when we were riding the bikes. We had to be cautious with the extra weight behind the Explorer. We took 2 days to get back to Fairbanks. Back at Trails End BMW, or Delta's Power Sports Fairbanks, we pulled the bike into the garage where they will conduct a warranty repair of the oil seals that went bad. I grabbed some final footage of the tire studs. Here you can see Rick's studs with about 725 miles on them. They're still holding up very well. I believe that we had plenty of tire stud to complete this ride and maybe ride some more, had we been able to return the whole way to Tok. As it were, we put around 725 or so miles on our bikes northbound, and obviously we're unable to do the ride back south. Here are my tire studs. The Shinko MX216s that I used had the very side lugs crack, and it was not due to the studs, because even every other one that I did not have studs in were cracked. I believe this was due to tire flexing and extreme cold temperatures. We ended this ride with quite the sense of accomplishment. We went out, we chose to go and live life. Thank you to Grip Studs, Cardo Systems, Hippo Hands, and SW Motec for your support of Expedition Frozen Seal. Thank you for watching.